Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is day 131, Thursday, July the 13th, 2017. I want to start off today's video by making a correction. I made an error yesterday, that being the day right after the news was breaking about this meeting between Donald Trump Jr., Manafort, and Kushner and this female Russian lawyer. I said that at that time it looked like the Russian lawyer was clean. I didn't see anything really going on with her. But having had about a day to look into this lawyer in question, Natalie Velesnikaya, or however you pronounce her name, the Russian lawyer Natalia is what we'll refer to her as. It appears that I was mistaken. It appears that Miss Natalia, the Russian lawyer, has a lot of problems. She's connected to a lot of people. And we've learned a lot more about her in the past 24 hours. Actually, less than that since I did the video. So let's go ahead and get after today's TowerGate. And I think you'll be very surprised at what we now know. And keep in mind, it's only been about a day and a half. We're going to learn a lot more. I'm also going to be working on and trying to learn as much as I can about our good friend, Mr. Goldstone. But let's go ahead and get right into the issue. It appears that the Russian lawyer, Natalia, whatever her name is openly anti-Trump and anti-Putin. If you go to her Facebook page, you will find many anti-Trump and anti-Putin postings on her Facebook page. You will also find a photo there of her at an anti-Trump rally. Also on her Facebook page is a picture of her in John McCain's office. The picture was taken in 2015. Obviously, it was another person who was actually taking the photo. So good old Mr. Magoo, he pops up again. Now, we already know that this Russian lawyer, Natalia, has had dealings with Fusion GPS. We know that she and Mr. Simpson, Glenn Simpson, one of the owners, one of the founders of Fusion GPS, worked together representing the same client. It appears that she also has had some other contacts with Fusion GPS. I'm still trying to find out if Mr. Goldstone has any connections with Fusion GPS, but let's take a look at what we do know about Mr. Goldstone. He is a very popular media figure in the UK. He is a heavyweight PR man, has managed some of the largest, biggest acts in the world. He's also extremely connected to the highest levels in the entertainment and film and movie and music industry, including EMI, Warner Brothers, or Time Warner at this point, and all the rest. This guy is very, very connected to a lot of the people who despise Trump. He's very connected to a lot of government officials. It's hard to say exactly where he's coming from, but this Russian artist that he represents, whose father is some kind of a real estate mogul, they were trying to get a deal with Trump to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. The deal never actually went through, or else it just could have been all part of the play. There's also a photo of this character, this pop star, this Russian pop star, with Mr. Goldstone. And I believe that was at this opening for this golf course where Trump was, and you can see him seated at the table. Someone took a photo, and I expect that that was no accident. Here's a very good question for us all to answer. We know that a FISA warrant was sought to look into Donald Trump, to look into Paul Manafort, to look into Jared Kushner and Roger Stone. And we can assume probably Donald Trump Jr. At this point, we just don't know, but I'm sure at some point we'll find out if he was included in those FISA warrant requests when we learn more about the unmasking and who was unmasked, assuming they ever actually ask the right questions. Because we all know how the swamp works. They call people in for hearings, but they don't actually ask the questions. The questions you need to know to put the hook in, those questions never get asked. It's a game they play with us. I believe Mr. Shapa was referring to the Stefan Molyneux example of whack-a-mole, which is exactly what this is. You should read his comment. It's very good. So this is very interesting. What if the FISA warrant, in fact this should be asked of James Comey and Loretta Lynch, was the FISA warrant that was requested for Paul Manafort and Jared Kushner and Roger Stone, possibly Trump Jr., was that FISA warrant request based on the meeting with this female Russian lawyer? That's a very good question, isn't it? It's certainly a question that should be asked. Whether or not the Pitbull, Mr. Gowdy, will have the fortitude and the sense to ask that question, I'm not sure. But I'll be calling his office tomorrow morning with a couple questions I think Mr. Gowdy should ask, being as how he is so concerned about these conversations or meetings with foreign governments, which seems to concern Mr. Gowdy. Mr. Gowdy doesn't seem to be very concerned about the Ukrainian thing. He doesn't seem to have any problem with all the interaction between the Clintons, the Obamas, and all these other people. Brennan, John McCain flying over to the UK to meet with the former Russia spy to get a hold of a dossier, which was a fraud, in order to take down a sitting president. None of that seems to bother Mr. Gowdy, but I'll be calling his office in the morning to ask his aides there at his office about some of the things that concern me and to see if maybe they concern Mr. Gowdy as well. Very, very interesting. If we find out that the FISA warrant was granted based on this meeting, then we will know for sure. Well, I already know for sure this was a setup. It was a setup. Why would this Russian lawyer want to meet with Trump Jr. to give him information that was damaging to Hillary Clinton when in fact she is a rabid anti-Trumpster and a rabid anti-Putin person? Why would someone who hates Putin and Trump want to meet with the son of Donald Trump to give information that would help Donald Trump? They wouldn't. It's a fucking setup. I'm starting to lose my temper again. I'm trying not to. I'm trying my very best. I'm trying to remain calm. I do apologize for the language. I'm losing my temper again. I was trying not to, but it's very, very difficult not to lose my temper. Okay, our good friend the Russian lawyer, Natasha Veselinskaya, or whatever the hell her name is, was denied entry visa into the U.S. in 2016. Denied entry into the U.S. in 2016. That was overruled by a New York court. Why was she initially denied entry into the United States? And what department of the government? The Department of Justice, the FBI, Immigration and Naturalization? I mean, which department of the government in the Obama administration reversed that request that she not be allowed entry into the United States in 2016? I think that's a very good question, don't you? I would like to know the answer to that. We also know that Michael McFaul, who was the United States ambassador to Russia, obviously had some kind of relationship with this woman, because this Russian lawyer, because he gave her the pass that you need to get into the hearings that were happening there in the swamp on the hill where he was speaking. She's sitting right behind him. She got the pass directly from him, and he has a bit of a history himself. He was kicked out of Russia by the Russian government because they found that he was trying to, or was involved in some programs that were designed to destabilize the Russian government, and particularly to, well, for lack of a better word, to overthrow Putin as a leader of Russia. He was involved in some things, probably the same things that Mr. Soros was involved in. That's why they shut down the Soros operations in Russia, and I imagine that this may have had something to do with Mr. McFaul, who now appears had some sort of a relationship with this Russian lawyer who hates Trump and hates Putin, but wanted to give Donald Trump Jr. some information that would be damaging to Hillary and would help him, according to Mr. Goldstone, who's connected to the highest levels of the entertainment industry and government officials and travels extensively throughout Russia. There are photos on his Facebook page standing in front of the Kremlin, wearing a funny hat, making stupid faces. He knows some folks. Goldstein, according to the Washington Post, says that he arranged the meeting at the request of a Russian client. It appears now that the client was the Russian pop star Iman Agalavarov, and that the nature of the information he had was supposedly about illegal campaign contributions. Now, this is very funny. Very, very funny. Because anyone involved in politics, anyone who understands how American politics works, there are investigations into illegal contributions in every election we have. Never is anyone ever found on the presidential side or on the politician side of it. Sometimes you'll get, a person who's contributing or collecting money, the outside foreign person might get in some trouble, but you never actually get one of the candidates or any people around them in trouble. They always get a free pass. Sometimes they find a scapegoat, and it's usually the person who was the coordinator of the money. But the thing about this is that anyone with any political acumen would know, especially a man like Paul Manafort, who's a very, very skilled political navigator. As soon as Manafort, had he been told, and I don't think he was told, but had he been told that, yeah, they got some information about illegal contributions, Manafort would have said, oh, don't waste your time. Don't even waste your time. There's nothing, that's not going to help us at all. Really, forget about it. Why? Because who investigates campaign contributions? Remember, political parties are private clubs. They're private clubs. And they have their own little rules that they have. Many of them rules, the people who vote for these parties don't know about these little rules, which many Democrats are finding out about right now because of the DNC lawsuit. But the way that these things work is that they have actually like a commission that they'll set up, which is a bunch of insiders. And whenever these allegations are made of illegal campaign contributions, which are made in every election, they'll get together and pick the names of the people who are going to be on the committee. That takes about a year. Then the committee will get together and have some lunch and have a little discussion, maybe go out and hit a few rounds of golf, talk about the grandkids, Brexit, yoga, things like that, murder DNC staffers, maybe things like that. They'll have some discussions, and then at some point they'll say, well, do we need to get a scapegoat here? Maybe they'll find a scapegoat here or there. But basically what happens in these investigations about campaign contributions, they are done by a committee of people who represent people who pull from both parties, usually, and they're all a bunch of insiders. And about a year, 2 or 3 years after the allegations are made, they'll come out with some sort of a little statement. Usually it'll be at the very back of some newspaper because it's been 3 years. It's 3 years after the election's over. It doesn't matter anymore, and there'll be some little snippet, if you hear anything at all. Most of the time, this stuff just disappears into the ether. In other words, allegations about campaign contributions are really, they're worthless to a skilled political person like Paul Manafort, who understands this stuff very well. He would have told he would have said, if it's about illegal campaign contributions, forget about that, because that's all inside deal. That's handled by the parties. They do a little commission, they talk about it, they look into some things, nothing really happens. It will have no impact on the election, nothing like that. Don't even, it's not even worth dealing with. Just forget about it. So anyway, the reason that Mr. Goldstone says that they had wanted to get the meeting together was because it had something to do with illegal campaign contributions. And again, anybody that knows how these things work in American elections would know that that would not be nearly a juicy enough piece of information to get a skilled guy like Paul Manafort to bite. Now maybe, or Roger Stone, he certainly wouldn't bite. He's a dirty trickster himself. He knows all about this kind of stuff. Now, Trump Jr., being kind of naive, not being involved in politics, might not understand exactly how this works. But you can look into illegal campaign contributions, and you will find about a million references to illegal campaign contributions, and every campaign beginning all the way back with George Washington. George Washington was accused of illegal campaign contributions. He was buying people beers in saloons. And it goes on and on. Never will you find anyone actually criminally held criminally responsible or anything like that. Now, back during the Clinton years, there was this guy named Charlie Tree who was involved in some stuff, but he was involved in a lot of things, very high-level things, and he did get served up as a scapegoat. But as far as people within the political party, the candidates, anyone around the candidates, American political people, no, nothing will ever happen. Illegal campaign contributions is again, shows you that it's kind of strange that Mr. Goldstone would use that. It just, something stinks about that as well. Something stinks about this whole thing. As you know, it was a setup. It's pretty obvious. Very, very obvious. So, it appears that this Russian lawyer hates Trump, hates Putin, his connections to Fusion GPS. Her and one of the founders of that company represented the same person in civil actions here in Washington, D.C. and in New York. So it appears that there's a little connection there. And that leads to the question, why would this Russian lawyer want to give information to Trump's son that would be damaging to Hillary and good for Trump when in fact she hates Trump? It's all over her Facebook page. Go look at it. I did. Doesn't make sense, does it? I wonder if the Pitbull Mr. Gowdy will be looking at that Facebook page. I wonder if the Pitbull Mr. Gowdy will be interested about the pic on her Facebook page from inside John McCain's office. I wonder if John McCain knows this Russian attorney. Something tells me he does. I wonder if Mr. Goldstone knows Mr. Steele, who was the man who put together the dossier for Fusion GPS. Do you think it's possible that Mr. Goldstone knows Christopher Steele? Do you think it's possible that Mr. Goldstone may have just been one part of this thing? The guy who could have some ability to set up the meeting, to set up Donald Trump Jr., to set up Manafort and Kushner, to set these guys up so that they could use that in the future, as has been pointed out by, I believe, Mr. Shapa or Nada. It was either Nada or Mr. Shapa that pointed that out in the comments. This thing stinks, folks. Something's rotten in Denmark. Something's very, very rotten in Denmark. I think we're going to learn a lot more about this as the days move forward. There's something about the timing of this. I think that this may have been, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, this could be the reason that they got the FISA warrants. And if that's true, man, there's a lot of smoke there. I wonder if we'll be having this Russian lawyer in for some hearings. I wonder if we're going to get to talk to her. I wonder which member of the Obama administration, which agency was able to go and get her entry visa overturned so that she could come into the country. I wonder who did that. I wonder maybe if Mr. McFaul did that. We know Mr. McFaul obviously knows her, likes her, I guess, because he gave her a pass to get into a congressional hearing. And she got a front row seat, sitting right behind him. Very interesting. Very interesting. John McCain, Fusion GPS. Same characters seem to show up again and again and again. All connected together like birds of a feather. They're flocking together. Something stinks. Something really stinks. But we'll keep following this story and we'll try to figure out exactly what's going on. But to me, I'm calling it a setup. And we'll have to find out more as we go along. It's been less than 48 hours since this story broke, and I think that we'll be learning a lot more in the days to come, because there's now a lot of questions as to why a Russian lawyer would be interested in having a meeting with Donald Trump, and why Mr. Goldstone would tell Trump Jr. that the meeting was about dirt that they had on Hillary Clinton, and then when they show up at the meeting, the lawyer who's supposed to have the dirt doesn't have any dirt. Instead, she wants to talk about adoption and about some Mavinsky law or something. This stuff stinks to high heaven, and I'm sure you can all smell it where you're at. Stinks to high heaven. Today was the first day of the Christopher Wray hearings. As you know, I talked about Christopher Wray. I did a video about a month and a half ago, went through his bio. He does have some connections to the deep state, including Comey and Mueller and various people like that. He's inside establishment guy. I'll reserve comment on exactly how honest he is until I actually see what he does. But today in those hearings, he was asked by, believe it or not, Lindsey Candy Pants Graham about whether or not he would want to look into the goings on between Hillary Clinton campaign, the Democratic National Committee, and the Ukrainian government. And he said that he would be happy to look into the dealings during the 2016 election between the DNC, Hillary Clinton campaign, and the Ukrainian government. He'd be more than happy to look into that. He was also asked another interesting question by Orrin Hatch regarding Hillary's emails, and he gave a pretty good answer. And the last part of that answer, he said that these types of things, because he actually worked in, when he was in the Department of Justice, he actually did work on a lot of these cases of classified information and things like that. So, and he is a white-collar crime expert. He'd be exactly the guy to look into it. He also would be a very guy to look into the DNC, into the emails, into the hacks, into the DNC server. He would be a very, very good guy to do that. He would understand this stuff. This is a guy that would understand it. This is a guy that could read the data, read the stuff written by these high-level IT people. He is a guy who could read that stuff and probably understand it. He's probably very skilled in the IT field himself. If you deal in white-collar crime, you almost have to be, because so much of that is done, in the various ways, using techniques on digital systems. But he did say, when asked by Orrin Hatch regarding the emails, that misuse of classified information or mishandling of classified information should be investigated and prosecuted very severely. We will see if Mr. Wray decides to look into Hillary's emails, especially since we know that the investigation got blown up by Loretta Lynch. We will see if Mr. Wray has any interest whatsoever in taking a look at the DNC server, where he can probably determine very quickly whether or not that was a hack or whether that was an inside job. I think with the most recent revelations that we have from this high-level IT person who went and looked at the original file, and we can see the transfer speed, the download speed, 23 megabytes per second. We can see the time stamp, and we can see roughly when and where that download occurred, and we can tell that it probably occurred onto a flash drive. Didn't happen through any internet connection. Tells us that it was most likely, almost 99% sure, that that information taken out of that server was taken directly at the server or from a node on that network within the intranet. The intranet being the independent network, not the internet. The intranet, which is the network within the local area network, the LAN, the LAN. And what that's the server. That's like if you work in an office, you have 10 people working in your office, you have 10 computers hooked up to that server. That's your LAN. That's your local area network. It's within where you are. Anything outside of that would be outside the local area network. But then again, you would have to use some form of communications going through some sort of cable, fiber optic, or dial-up, or whatever you have, wireless or whatever it may be, you still will not achieve a 23 megabytes per second download speed. You would probably even have to go directly into the server with something, and you may have to suspend your security software because it would probably even cause problems with getting that kind of download speed of these types of documents. So we will see what Christopher Wray is all about. I expect he will be easily confirmed. I don't see any problem whatsoever with his confirmation. Again, he's comes from the deep state. I did his bio. You can go back and look at that video. He's connected to a lot of people. He's worked with Mueller. He's worked for Mueller. He has worked with Comey. He's worked with a lot of people. He's been around a lot. He's come up through the ranks. Now maybe he's just an honest guy who kind of minded his own business and did his own thing. But we're going to find out if he is like a Trey Gowdy or someone else. A guy that likes to talk tough. A guy that likes to talk about law and order. A guy that likes to talk about doing the right thing. But then when he actually comes time to pull the trigger, he misfires. Does not hit the target. Does not take the shot. Doesn't even squint an eye. Doesn't get in that good prone firing position because he has absolutely no intention of taking the shot. Nope. He puckers up and his testicles crawl up his butt. I've met people like that in certain situations. They freeze up. They can't make it happen. Trey Gowdy is one of those people. So we have some very interesting things coming out. Clearly, I can tell you that Donald Trump Jr. did not commit any crime. No information was transferred, and even if there was, it wasn't a crime. Donald Trump Jr. is a private citizen. His father did not even know about any of this. Still didn't know about it until a couple of days ago. So there's no crime here. Once again, it looks like this is going to backfire very badly, just like everything else that seems to have backfired. And if you had Republicans or committee members who were actually interested in getting to the bottom of any of this, who were actually interested in the truth, we would be seeing many of these people being perp walked and taken to jail. But when you have people like Trey Gowdy and all the other swamp monsters pretending to be interested in seeking truth, getting justice, but it's all pretend. It's Chinese kabuki theater. Or is that Japanese? I believe it's Japanese kabuki theater. Yes, I believe it's Japanese kabuki theater. So, anyway, we're going to continue to learn much more about this female Russian lawyer. We're going to continue to learn more about Mr. Goldstone. I think someone's probably going to ask the same question I ask at some hearing, or they're going to ask. I'm going to ask Trey Gowdy through one of his assistants to make sure that this question gets answered, or certainly ask of whether or not the FISA warrant was based on this meeting, because the request for the FISA warrant came after this meeting. It should also be noted that this Russian lawyer's attendance in that committee hearing as a guest of Mr. McFaul, the Russian ambassador, occurred 6 days after this meeting. This stuff stinks, folks. It was a setup. It's exactly what it was. They got a photo. They got to leak out some stuff about this interaction with someone, and now we know that this lawyer does have connections with various officials in the Russian government. But they're not people who are friendly to Putin. There are other officials in the Russian government who are not friendly to Putin, and probably other organizations as well. There's probably a lot more to Miss Natalia Veselitskaya than what meets the eye, and I'm sure much more will be coming out. I'm sure much more will be coming out about Mr. Goldstone and whether or not he has any association with GPS Fusion, Mr. Christopher Steele, John McCain, or any of these other people. I'm telling you, at some point, this thing's going to blow, and they'll have no choice. They'll have to run some sort of a super cover-up to put this thing away, because there's just too much out there. None of this makes any sense. The only sense that any of it makes is that there was a massive effort to destroy the presidency of Donald Trump, first his candidacy and then his presidency. This is all part of it. When that didn't work out, Then they had to cover their tracks because they assumed that Hillary would win. But Hillary didn't win. They still have their people in the deep state helping them. But ultimately, they are going to be thinned out. Ultimately, Trump will get his people in there. Ultimately, we may find out some truths about these things. And so there's a massive cover-up operation. At the same time, they're still trying even harder to take on Trump because they know that if he does get control of this damn government and he actually gets this thing charted on the right course, just like Hillary Clinton said, a lot of these people are going to hang. But I'm telling you folks, this thing right here was a setup. It was a setup, and it's going to become very, very obvious. We also might actually get some questions about the DNC, Hillary Clinton, working with the Ukrainian government. Now, believe it or not, a CNN spoke with a source at the DNC, and the DNC source told CNN that there was never actually any information that was given to them by the Ukrainian government, that it was just rumors and talk in the hallways. Oh yeah? Well, that's not what this person who I'll be talking about more tomorrow, it's not what this Chalupa person, Mr. or Mrs. Chalupa, I can't remember if it's a male or a woman, but anyway, there was a person named Chalupa who was apparently sort of the intermediary between the DNC and the Ukrainian government. And she's talking a whole different tune. She's talking about all sorts of information being transferred, documents being transferred that came from the intelligence community, from the government, from the media, all that supposedly had bad things about Trump. She's talking about all sorts of information being shared. While this DNC stooge tells CNN that there was never any documents. So somebody is lying. Somebody is lying. Just as in the case with Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Miss Renteria and James Comey talking about this email about Loretta Lynch. Somebody's lying. Either Loretta Lynch is lying or Comey's lying. Renteria may be lying. Wasserman Schultz could be lying. Maybe they're all lying. They probably are. I'm trying to control myself. It's getting very difficult. I just get angrier and angrier. I'm not angry at the Democrats. This is exactly what I expect from them. I observe the Clintons. And I can tell you that when the Clintons left the White House, it was no secret when the Clintons were in power that they kept FBI files for an enemies list. Go back and Google the term Clinton's enemies list. You will find many, many, many articles from the early 90s when the Clintons were in the White House. It was very well known, talked about publicly and throughout the media circles, that the Clintons kept FBI files on their enemies list. Their enemies list was once said to be somewhere around 4,000 people. When the Clintons left the White House, they took their enemies list with them, along with all the FBI files and all the data that they had put together on their enemies, many of whom they appointed into positions in the government so that they could use what they have on these people as blackmail should they ever be in a position to need to do so. Loretta Lynch is finding out all about that. What do you think that meeting on the plane was all about? That was Bill Clinton sending Loretta Lynch a message to take care of that investigation, or else. Because he's got some files on her too. It's all very interesting, folks. And believe me, when you get to the bottom of this stinking fish barrel, when you get to the very bottom of this stinking fish barrel, you will find the rotting fish head of a Clinton. I can absolutely guarantee you that. And this whole thing could have been put away in about 1 hour. Had I been the Attorney General for Donald Trump, the very first time I heard about Russia-Trump collusion, I would have sent a little link to one of the Clintons' friends that I was going to be launching a full-scale set of criminal charges against the Clintons and the Clinton Foundation, to include Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea and others involved in the Clinton Foundation, that I was getting ready to prepare the documents for their indictments, and I would sit back and waited a couple hours for the phone to ring. And pretty soon, you could have cut a very good deal, which is, hey, you know, if all this Russia stuff would just go away, that's kind of bothering all of us right now, if this whole Russia thing would just go away, Trump-Russia collusion and all this stuff, if this would go away, I could maybe look over that Clinton Foundation stuff and just kind of let it go. That's how I would have handled it. And believe me, it would have went away. Bill and Hillary would have made one phone call, and you wouldn't have heard another peep out of Russia-Trump collusion. Not a single peep. That's how things work in the swamp, folks. If I was there, I'd be taking care of business. Believe me. Believe me, I will be calling Trey Gowdy's office in the morning. I have some questions for Mr. Gowdy because of his concerns. I too have some concerns, Mr. Gowdy. And I'll be addressing those concerns with one of your staff people there at your office in South Carolina, because I know you won't pick up the phone. Hell, my congressman won't talk to me. I'm pretty sure you won't. So anyway, that's what we have today. TowerGate, day 131, July the 13th, 2017, Thursday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for the comments and sharing my videos. I appreciate each and every one of you. Love reading your comments. I look forward to being back with you tomorrow. We're going to stay on this thing. We're going to stay on it like white on rice. I can assure you that. I'm starting to get upset, so I'm going to end this video because I'm going to start cursing. And I'm going to start throwing some shit. Alrighty, so you all have a good evening. Thanks again. Good night.